our friend Jeff Passan broke that baseball and the Players Association are focusing on a plan backed by federal health officials that could have players in training camps by May and games soon thereafter. And he was kind enough to call on the show to put a little bit more meat on those bones. How are you, Jeff?
I am well, Rich. How are you?
I'm glad to hear that. So how real is this plan about, I guess, creating their own bubble world, to use, or bubble city, or bubble state, and to use, I guess, the Cuban phrase of what the NBA might be considering?
Yeah, at this point, it's not terribly realistic because there are so many logistical hoops that they need to jump through. The first thing that they would need to do is get players on board and strike some sort of a deal between the players and the league in order to start going ahead and making plans. How many rooms do we need? How many people do we need to make food? How many people do we need to drive buses? Where do we find these people? How do we background check them? I mean, there are, like, I say a million things. There are thousands of things that need to be done before this happens. But the feeling among some people inside the sport right now is that this is the best hope for getting baseball on the field this year. Now, as Major League Baseball said in a statement earlier today, there are other options out there, but most of those options involve waiting. And as we know, and as we've seen in many regards with sports, one wait turns into a much longer one. And when you have a date in mind, it typically gets pushed back. When you do something like this biodome situation, the dates are immaterial because the sanctity of the dome is what is supposed to keep you and those around you and those on the outside safe and healthy. And if they can get buy-in from players to do that, which is going to be really, really hard to do, I think this thing at very least has a chance of moving forward and at least seeing the logistical capabilities and whether they can pull that off.
Well, I guess, and again, it is something you just showed about when we're like, hey, sports is going to have to return. You just went through, and it's even if you do get all the players on board, as you point out, the logistics aspect. Where do they stay? How clean? How can they? They guarantee the cleanliness or the COVID-19 freeness of all of that? And all it takes is one person who drove the bus to break their own containment because makes sense that a family member needs to come to their house for something, and that person ran into another person who had COVID-19. Now all of a sudden an entire major league club gets exposed through all of that. I cannot imagine how to figure all that out. Where is the, I guess, push of this coming from? Was it maybe from the call with the president over the weekend with all of the commissioners, Jeff?
No. This is something that predates that call by a couple of weeks now. And there have been some federal health officials who have been strongly in favor of this plan. And listen, they have their own motivations, right? I think that they see baseball as sort of an opportunity to reopen the country. Now, is it premature? It might be. And is the possibility of baseball not being able to do this realistic? Yes, very. Like, if they pull this thing off, it will be an incredible. If they pull this thing off and they pull it off with the support of the players, and they pull it off and can somehow keep everyone healthy and keep everybody inside the biodome and get buy-in from everyone, it will be an unbelievable feat. That being said, if that is the best option that they've got right now, and players recognize that the only way I get paid in 2020 is if I play baseball games, well, they want to play baseball games. And the as crazy as some of the elements of this are, Rich, and I fully acknowledge they are bonkers, the motivations of players to get paid and of owners to make money are very, very strong.
Jeff Passan, ESPN MLB insider here on the Rich Eisen Show. So, again, clearly something, we've got to plan ahead. People have to plan ahead. Again, at the end of May or the beginning of June, there may be better contact tracing in the United States. There may be a better way for everybody to know who's had it or who has it, and thus those who've had it are able to do stuff like go outdoors, and those who have it are the ones who are put inside, not the entire population. So it is possible that we plan for these moments, that conditions as they are now, when it is better, we can pull that out of the front drawer and actually do it. So what,
100%.
however, correct. So what, with social distancing obviously still needing to take place, what might fans need to know about how baseball or the plans for this would go? I guess where the players are all together and trying to maintain their health in a sport where everybody's in a dugout, et cetera, and so on and so forth.
Well, there's a possibility, Rich, that everybody's not in the dugout. There's a possibility that in order to model social distancing for the general public who are going to be watching these games on television, that we're going to see players sitting in the stands 6 feet apart. That's part of, I think, the government push here, and why health officials see baseball, which is a sport that typically socially distances pretty naturally, as being archetypal in coming back. Now, between that and the idea of an electronic strike zone so that the umpire doesn't have to hover over the catcher, and base coaches standing even further back than they typically would. I mean, there are a bunch of little things that can be done, but what they preach also has to be practiced. Like inside the clubhouses, you're not going to have like a bunch of grab assing going on. Like that just can't be part of this whole thing. It just can't, in order for it to work. Even if you are inside the biodome, even if you are clean, it's like you gotta, the way one person described it to me is, for something like this to work, baseball players need to look at themselves as a little less baseball player and a little more armed forces member. And that is in the discipline that they would need to do this, whether it's following the rules that are put into place by public health officials, or doing something as simple as knowing that for the next, indefinite period of time, you're not going to be able to go out and grab a meal, drink a beer, meet up with a friend, hang out with a girl. None of those things are on the table anymore. And what you're getting for this is threefold. Number one, you're getting paid for it. Number two, you're becoming part of the first wave of people to be back, and the first sport to be back in America. And number three, you could potentially be doing a service to baseball and setting it up long term, because if baseball, Rich, is this first sport back, and if it's got the national attention, this is something that could be incredible for the long term health of the sport. And I think that people in the game recognize that, and if they can, want to take advantage.
To become, if you will, the national pastime once again.
Right. Yeah, no question about it. And I think that appeals to people, but they don't want to get too far out over their skis here. And that's why the idea that this is going to be rushed into place, I think, is pretty optimistic. But if they land, this week's going to be an important week. The players in MLB are going to be talking. They're going to be talking the alternatives, and they're going to see if they can get together on the economics of this. And if they can get together on the economics, then all of a sudden, there's a fighting chance for this plan.
And so that's this week is what you're saying. Well, and again, it's not like that, because you do have to plan for in case, the virus timeline does actually allow for something like this, right?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. And they, MLB and the union had conversations yesterday. I think you're gonna really start hearing from some players and their feelings on the situation. And typically the players who are going to be speaking out are the ones who are going to be against this. But I've gotten, let's put it this way, I've heard from a number of players, and there have been a pretty wide variance of opinions. One guy who I talked with who said no way he would do it, and then he talked with his wife, and he said, okay, I guess I'll do it. Because she said, if this is the only way you're getting paid, go do it. I can deal with it. Another player who essentially was saying, yeah, this sounds like an okay idea, but are we really going to ask baseball players to be in quarantine for potentially months and play in 120-degree heat in Phoenix to a game that, because of some of the changes, might not look particularly familiar? Totally reasonable point. And then I heard from another player who said, I want to get paid. I'll do whatever they want me to. and that was that.
Running the gamut, as you would say. Okay, Jeff, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. I know you got more to do. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Pleasure's always mine, my friend.
Right
Take care,
back
Rich.
at you. Thanks for the call. That's Jeff Passan of ESPN.